Hello there, my name is Akash Soni, a postgraduate in economics with UGC NET qualified, and today I am going to start with the microeconomics as per the UGC NET syllabus. When we start to learn about the microeconomics, we start with the concept demand, which was first introduced by the Alfred Marshall in 1890s in his famous book Principle of Economics. He defines demand as when it fulfills the three basic criteria, that is, desire to purchase, willingness to pay, and ability to pay. For example, suppose if I have desire to purchase a Lamborghini, but I am not able to pay for it, in that scenario, it cannot be considered as demand. In order it to be considered as demand, it must fulfill all these three basic criteria, that is, I must be having willingness to pay for it as well as ability to pay for it. In any case, when I am not fulfilling any of these criteria, it cannot be considered as demand. So next we will learn about law of demand, which was given by Alfred Marshall, and according to him, there lies an inverse relationship between price of the commodity and the quantity demanded for it, and it can also be said as individual demand. And as far as market demand is concerned, so it can be said as the summation of individual demand. And we will learn more about it in our later discussion. But before that, let's understand what is the difference between change in demand and change in quantity demanded. When we say there is a change in demand, it is due to change in factors like our income, our taste and preferences, and the price of substitutes or complements which gets changed. But when we say there is a change in quantity demanded, so it is just related to the price. When there is a change in price of the commodity, our quantity demanded for that product or that good gets changed also. So now let's understand a bit about demand curve, which is normally drawn as a downward sloping, and the reasons for it to be downward sloping, we see that the first one as law of diminishing marginal utility. It was also defined by Alfred Marshall, where he states that as the consumer consumes more and more of a good, the marginal utility derived from each successive units keeps on decreasing. Number 2 is the income effect. Suppose when there is a decrease in price of a commodity, due to which our real income gets increased, and so that our purchasing power also gets increased, and we start to increase our demand as well. As for substitution effect, suppose that when the price of any substitute gets decreased, the goods become cheaper and we start to demand more of that particular good. So these are the regions due to which the demand curve is downward sloping. Now let's understand these three concepts in more details. So now let's understand these three concepts in more detail. Before going further for the law of diminishing marginal utility, let's first understand what does the term utility mean. Utility is the amount of satisfaction derived from consuming a good or a service. Suppose that when we purchase a new fan, it produces good air, but with time its efficiency gets reduced. So what we will say, its efficiency, when its efficiency gets reduced, it means that it starts to deliver less utility than the previous time when we bought it for the very first time, right? And the classical economists believe that we can measure utility in terms of utils. So utils was the unit for measuring utility. In order to understand law of diminishing marginal utility, we need to understand the two basic concepts before that. Number one is marginal utility and the other one is total utility, whereas marginal means extra. When we get the additional utility by utilizing the additional units of a good, we get the marginal utility from that particular good, and when we sum up the marginal utility, we get the total utility. Now we can understand it from the graph and the table as well. Suppose we are very thirsty and we need to drink a glass of water. So when we take the first glass of water, we get the maximum satisfaction from the very first glass of water, that is 15 utils we get. Marginal utility as well as total utility is also 15. With the extra additional unit of glass of water, our marginal utility gets reduced, and it is getting reduced regularly. It can, at one particular point it will happen that it can come to 0 and later on it can go to negative, because we cannot drink water, because we cannot drink water on the regular basis, otherwise it will be dissatisfactory for us, right? So we can see that marginal utility can be 0 or can also be negative, but total utility can never be negative. So we need to remember that. So now let's understand with the graph, and it is the graphical representation of the above table. So we can see that with the additional glass of water, our marginal utility was getting reduced, and at one point it became 0 and later on it went to negative, but our total utility was increasing at the decreasing rate, and where the marginal utility becomes 0, the total will be maximum, and when we will draw it, it will give us the satiation point, right? So what we understood till now, we got to know about the law of demand, where there lies a negative relationship between the price and quantity demanded. We can also see from the graph as well why it is downward sloping, due to the three main regions, that is law of diminishing marginal utility, income effect and the substitution effect. And we can also see from the graph as well, when the price of the commodity, suppose that it was 5 in the beginning, we were able to purchase 10 units of that particular good, but with time when its price got reduced to 2.5, we were able to purchase the additional, that is 20 units of a particular good, and when it becomes to 0.5, we were able to purchase even more, that is 30 units of a particular product, right? So it is telling us about the income effect. And as far as substitution effect is concerned, so we have already discussed, when the price of any commodity gets reduced, it becomes cheaper, and we want to buy more of that particular product, so that our demand for that particular product increases. So now let's understand the exceptions of the law of demand. The first one is Veblen effect. And what does it say? Goods when having a prestigious value. For example, iPhone. Why do we purchase iPhone? Because it is having a prestigious value in the society. When we say that we are having the 14 Pro Plus or 14 Pro, people will say, wow, he's having the 14 Pro. It means that it is costlier. But when it starts to sell around 30 to 40k or even below that, so people will consider it as a budget phone, so Apple will lose its prestigious value, right? So it is the case of Veblen effect, where the law of demand fails, because as prices rises, the demand for that products also gets rises. The next one is the Giffen goods, and there lies a positive relationship between price and the quantity demanded, as we discussed earlier for the case of Veblen effect. We can see from the graph also, it is in the upward sloping trend, like, and many people get confused with the concept of Giffen good, like, so let's understand what is Giffen good. Giffen good is something when people start to consume it more when its price rises. It was first given by Robert Giffen, who was a Scottish economist. What just he noticed that the rise in the price of basic food increased the demand for that particular item. Like, what just he noticed, that when there is a price increase in the particular product, the demand for that very product also got increased. Let's understand how he came to know about it. So let's understand more deeply about it. Suppose a poor family has income of 400 rupees and it spent it on their food consumption, that is wheat and rice. Okay. So we are having two goods, rice and wheat. Rice, we all know that it is considered as inferior as compared to wheat. So suppose the rice was selling at 5 rupees per kg and wheat was selling as 20 rupees per kg, where wheat was a normal good and rice was an inferior good. So the total expenditure on rice was 200 rupees, where we were able to purchase 40 kg of rice, whereas the same amount was spent on wheat where they were able to purchase only 10 kg of wheat, and they were able to consume 50 kg per month with the combination of rice and wheat. Now, suppose price of the rice increases to rupees 6. In that situation, to maintain its current consumption, that is of 50 kg, he need to pay 440 rupees on their consumption. That cannot be possible, because in economics we need to suppose that something will be fixed throughout. Otherwise, there will be the conflict with the concepts, right? So suppose that when the price got increased for the rice, it became 6 from 5. He needs to spend 240 rupees for the same, as well as for wheat he needs to spend 200 rupees, and it will come out to be 440, which was not possible. So for that household to get its total expenditure at 400 only, he need to do the combination kind of a thing. So suppose that, okay, when the price of the rice got increased from 5 to 6, he was able to reduce the consumption of wheat. That he reduced 3 kg of wheat, and he exceeded 3 kg of rice, where he was able to pay 258 rupees for the rice consumption and 140 for the wheat consumption, and it came out to be 400. So as we saw, the demand for rice rose from 40 to 43 kg despite its increase in price. But there are conditions for a good to be a given good. The good must be inferior, the good must form a large percentage of total consumption, there must be a lack of close substitute for the goods. Thank you so much.